Hello, hello. Welcome back, finally, to Writing Women, the show where I talk about the women who exist in fiction and the people who created them. Because of the subject matter for today, I am going to be picking up my embroidery again that I have not worked on in a very long time, so that I can work on it while I talk about this book. It has been a month. I've been working 2 jobs this last couple of weeks, along with everything else that I've had going on with school and everything, though my patrons will be getting a nice drop by the time this video airs. I have been refining a novel that I wrote during the National Novel Writing Month this past year into a screenplay for a project for one of my classes, and I will be posting the whole first act of that on Patreon. So if you are interested in seeing that, then go ahead over there and subscribe. It is a Hallmark style movie that is going to turn into a cosmic horror type thing. So if that sounds interesting to you at all, you know where to find it. Since it's been a pretty rough time, I was searching around to figure out what I wanted to talk about for this video. I wanted to read something comforting and happy. Then I remembered that I have all 4 of the Circle Opens books to talk about. So today I will be talking about Magic Steps, the first of the 4 books in the continuation of the Emelan universe. One thing I want to hit on early on is that this book is a really great example of how to continue your story after a time gap. The Tortall books take place mostly sequentially in that timeline, but each time there's a new series, it's typically a new main character. We see returning characters from other series, but the point of view character is a whole new person. That makes continuing a universe a little easier, I think, because you're dealing less with how kind of stale and samey the stories can become when it's the same person with the same abilities every single time. Continuing a series, especially one with many powerful characters in it, can be really tricky. You start to deal with things like power creep. So you have to start coming up with bigger and badder enemies every time for them to have a new, bigger challenge, especially when your main cast has already become so powerful. This type of thing is something that Tammy handles like nobody else I've ever read. Her characters are often really powerful, and the challenges that they face come largely from the limitations of their power. She establishes really clearly the benefits and drawbacks of each person's abilities, while at the same time she shows how a really smart mage can use their abilities in unique ways. So Sandry can't heal people, but she can use her power to tie the Duke's spirit to his body after his heart attack until the healers can get to him and do what they need to do. Or she can use her magic to stitch up a cut on someone's face until they can see a healer to actually heal it. Before I get too far into more examples, I will do a recap of what happens in the book for those of you who either have not read it or haven't read it in a while. Sandry is staying with her uncle Duke Vedris, the ruler of Emelan. He has recently suffered a heart attack and is unwell. Elsewhere, a boy named Pasco is joining a fishing fleet because he has a reputation for being able to dance good luck for people in the village needs fish. Duke Vedris is visiting his people, showing his face to them to remind him of his strength after his heart attack. In front of the gathered crowd, a man from Rocott House loudly implies to the Duke's face that his health, and therefore the peace and law of the realm, are in question. Duke Vedris tells Sandry that the man was Jamar Rocott, and his family are basically thieves and murderers outside of Emelan. The Duke assures Sandry that she will never have to deal with the Rocotts. I'm sure that will go well. Back with the fishing fleet, Pasco's friend Osa has gotten his grandmother to teach Pasco the fishing dance. At first, Pasco's nervous, but he begins to feel the dance as he moves through it. When he finishes, he hears applause. He sees a party of riders have joined them on the beach. It is the Duke and his party. Sandry dismounts and inspects Pasco. She asks him where he learned to dance a magical working, and he insists that he doesn't know what she means. The story comes out about his times dancing for good luck for people. Duke Vedris knows of Pasco's family. They are harriers and loyal ones of the Provost's Guard. Sandry finally introduces herself to Pasco, and he recognizes her name. Sandry and her siblings are kind of famous. A rider from the Guard comes up at a gallop to report a request for the Duke's presence at Rocott House. Jamar Rocott has been murdered. The Duke leaves some of his guards with Sandry and then rides off to go investigate. Sandry's working out how best to handle Pasco without him bolting on her. She gets him talking about the murder. He explains what harriers are to her. The colors they wear look like those of harrier hawks. The guard houses are called coops, so they're like the provost's dogs in Tortall. Pasco doesn't seem enthusiastic about harrier work, and Sandry suggests that he would have a choice in careers if he learned to be a mage. They make a bargain to return and see what the fishing fleet's catch would be like that night, and Sandry rides off to find her uncle. At Rocott House, the guards try to refuse entry to Sandry. She uses a magical tie to her uncle to let him know that she wants to be let inside. He opens a window to yell back that it's an unfit site for her. She tells him that she insists she be let inside and that she is no stranger to bad things. Her personal guards panic a little bit because the last time she insisted on something was when they tried to keep her from Vedris after his heart attack. She apparently unraveled every thread in the hall and cocooned the people standing in her way. The Duke gives in and orders her to be let inside. The captain, who is also Pasco's uncle, keeps trying to condescendingly tell Sandry to wait downstairs or outside the room, and she basically just ignores him. Oh, Sandry is 14 now, by the way. It's been a few years since the end of the last series. At the scene is a mess. Sandry refuses to show weakness at the sight of all of the blood. Jamar Rocott has been butchered. His parts have been left hung all over the room, and his jewelry has been left as if it were too disgusting to steal. Rocott's guards are being interrogated, and one of the staff is telling the guards that his spells never warned him. Sandry tells the people in the room that the spells are also intact because nobody there can see magic. She helps the guards find the jewelry that acted as a key for the spells and explains how they work. The captain sort of sneers at her and says she's good at weaving and needlework, so she should leave the important magic to the guards. The Duke rightly picks this as their time to go. Duke Vedris remarks that Jamar Rocott kind of reaped what he sowed. He killed many people and finally found himself on the receiving end of a blade. Pasco's training with his mother and cousins to fight with a baton. He asks his mom if she's ever heard of dancing magic, and she kind of laughs in his face. So do his cousins. They accuse him of wanting to slack off instead of doing real work. Sandry joins her uncle and Baron Erdogan in his workroom to help with the running of the household, basically. He also asks her opinion on state matters, though she has no idea why. I can guess why. She dips out to return to the fishing village, and when she arrives, she sees that most of the fleet has already returned, full of fish. Pasco is there, staring open-mouthed in shock. Sandry tries to press him about his magic, but he kind of runs away from her. She has her guards ride with her all the way to Winding Circle Temple so she can ask Lark for advice. Discipline is depressingly empty as Sandry's siblings have gone traveling with their teachers. Lark has heard of dancing magic before, but none of the groups who practice it are near enough to teach Pasco. Sandry assists Lark with some work while they talk. It is mage law that if no mage of the same talent can be found, the discovery mage must teach them instead. Sandry is worried because she is still so new as a mage, but Lark gives her really good advice and reminds her that Winding Circle is nearby if she needs any help. The next morning, Pasco is training with his cousins unsupervised. His older cousin Vani is beating on him for disappearing that morning and leaving Vani with chores. In a moment of fear, Pasco does a quick dance move that ends with a leap, and it sends his cousins flying into the air where they hang, unable to get down. Pasco's grandfather comes out to see what's going on. Vani can't keep his mouth shut, and Granther figures out that he has been beating Pasco and all of the others haven't stopped him. He sets that aside for later and sends Pasco to get help. At Duke's Citadel, Sandry wakes up late. She joins her uncle and fills him in on the day before. He seems amused at the idea of her as a teacher. A maid brings Pasco in, and he frantically begs Sandry for help. Back at the Accolon household, Sandry and Pasco greet his mother, and Sandry soothes her ruffled feathers about not being told about Pasco's magic right away. In the yard, Sandry inspects the working. Vani is screaming threats at Pasco, and Sandry magically seals his mouth shut so she won't be interrupted. She briefly takes Pasco aside to explain wards and meditation to access your magic. When they return to the courtyard, Pasco works out how to reverse the dance steps to change the effect. Sandry asks him some leading questions until he remembers to ask her to ward them before he successfully performs the working. Sandry has put the fear of untrained magic in Pasco, and she leads him away to talk about lessons. Granther takes Vani for a talk about the way he's been treating Pasco. Another of the Rocots, Kassam, comes to see the Duke. He tries to say that Sandry should be left out, and the Duke insists that she can handle whatever he has to say. Kassam wants assurance that Duke Vedris is keeping an eye on the investigation, but the Duke isn't having it. He asks what the Rocots did to provoke the murders. Kassam didn't go to the provost because she suspects it to be a personal matter. Kassam believes that their business rivals, the Dihonor family, are responsible. All of Kassam's extended family outside Summersea have been killed. Apparently, the display of Jamar's head was a message to repay a wrong done by the Rocots involving beheadings of the Dihonor family. Gross. The Duke sends Baron Erdogan with Kassam to the provost to give her this report. On the way, they are attacked, assassins of the Dihonors accompanied by a drug-addicted mage who wraps them in a special type of unmagic. This magic wraps them in nothing and makes them undetectable to everything. They take out the guards non-lethally and behead Kassam. Alzena and Norhar Dihonor display the head atop the market fountain. Duke Vedris visits his guards in the infirmary to get the full story. The assassins used confusion balls on some of the guards, but even the ones who didn't have the confusion balls used on them didn't see anything. Sandry notices the healing of the injured guard's leg looks a little strange. Wulfric Snaptrap, a Harrier mage, inspects the injured man and confirms to Sandry that there is a shadow on the wound. It is devouring the healing magic as it's being sent into the wound. Sandry instructs the healer to remove his own magic and uses hers to figure out what's up. She weaves her power underneath the smear of darkness, and she ties the unmagic into a bundle, removing it from the guard. Wulfric bundles it up in a protected bag, and Sandry removes more off of the other guard. Wulfric takes the unmagic away to study it. When Pasco comes to Duke's Citadel for his first lesson, he's clearly uncomfortable. Sandry tries to meditate with him, and he's too antsy. When their time is up, he leaves, and Sandry sets their next lesson for a location closer to Pasco's home where he'll be a little more comfortable. Lark surprises Sandry with a visit, and with her is a famous dancer, Yasmin Hebet. They've been friends since Lark's days as a tumbler, but Yasmin has retired and opened a school. She wants to teach Pasco. The Duke comes to say hello to Lark and is delighted to see Yasmin. They chat for a while, and Sandry realizes that Yasmin and the Duke seem to be flirting a little bit. Wulfric comes to report his findings. He reports that the mage is a dragon salt addict, a dangerous and powerful drug. Traces of it exist in the residue, and he's also figured out that it is unmagic. They are all extremely afraid. Unmagic is terrifying and versatile. It damages the user but can be used to do all sorts of nefarious things. First, it will drive the user mad, and they assume that the mage uses dragon salt to handle that madness. Lark leaves to inform the Mages Council of the new development. The assassins are onto a new target. This time it's Fariji Rocot and his family. Alzena kills the children first and then the adults. While fleeing, she is caught in the leg by an arrow. The archer was firing wildly, though they could not see her. She begins to question why she's doing all of this. While out with her guards, Sandry comes across this new crime scene. She crosses the barrier to investigate and sees traces of unmagic everywhere. Using the kit that she keeps with her, she covers the smears of unmagic so nobody will touch them before Wulfric arrives. She tracks the evidence away from the house, following the footsteps as she goes. Eventually, she starts seeing blood outlines in one of the unmagic prints and knows that the killer is wounded. Wulfric has been watching her and asks her for her continued help in figuring out the whole unmagic situation. They track it inside and through to the assassin's entry point on the roof. Following the traces takes them across the rooftops and finally to the spot where the magic had been put on the killer. Sandry's exhausted and reaches out for her siblings reflexively before remembering that they weren't here. After everything's taken care of in the Rocot house, Sandry is taken home. It has become late. Duke's Citadel is a bustle of activity. Vedris has called all of the Rocots in the city into his inner keep. He orders a search of the city to find the killers. Alzena and Norhar have called a healer for her injury. The healer finishes and they kill her. Norhar looks at Alzena's boot and notices blood outside of it, and he gets angry, knowing that they can be tracked now. Alzena doesn't seem to care. The mage, who is missing both of his legs, disappears the bodies of the healer and her guard before demanding more dragon salt. They offer him some as a bribe for him to use his power to help them find a safe house. Alzena says that she knows somewhere to go where no one will look for them. In the night, Sandry wakes from a nightmare. She digs out her woven magic circle and holds it for comfort, since she can't reach out to her actual siblings. She's reluctant to wake in the morning, but knows that Pasco will be waiting for her. When they meet, he is definitely reluctant. The captain, his hairier uncle, has told his parents that Pasco must have bribed Sandry to say that his magic only works with dancing. Sandry finally loses her patience. She tells him that his uncle doesn't know anything about magic and that they'll never find out what he can do without lessons. He's cowed by her outburst, so she bribes him by telling him he will meet his dance teacher if he meditates. He is ecstatic and actually tries during meditation. After, Sandry brings him to Yasmin, and he is awed. He knows who Yasmin is and what it means to be taught by her. Yasmin gives Pasco his first lesson. She makes him stretch his body to its limit and drill until he is ready to collapse. Duke Vedris happens to stop by to see Yasmin, and Sandry hopes that he will focus on her instead of overworking himself. Yasmin offers Sandry a room in her school for Pasco's meditation lessons going forward. When Sandry is alone in her room that evening, she begins trying to work out ways that she and Pasco can assist the Harriers with their magic. While Pasco is taking his dance lesson the next day, Sandry continues her work. She wonders if the fish drawing dance could be reworked to bring in criminals. After another day of learning, Sandry is taking a meal with her uncle and Yasmin when Wulfric barges in. Sandry rushes Wulfric from the room so she can leave the two adults alone. He takes her to the most recent site of the Rocott murders to do some unmagic cleanup. They leave the other provost guards outside, and only Sandry's two personal guards follow them in. Wulfric leads her through the house, and when they enter the crime scene upstairs, he falls forward suddenly. He ran right into the Dihanor's blades. They'd been hiding out, assuming that nobody would search for them in one of their crime scenes. They fight Sandry's guards briefly before the Unmage pulls them away with his power. It tries to drag Sandry in too to devour the magic that's in her, but her guards hold on to her and save her. When the dust settles, they see that Wulfric is dead. Sandry is very upset at losing him. She clears the guards from the room and begins cleaning up the unmagic. She discovers that she can pull it like thread the same way that she can true magic. When she finishes, she manages to make her statement to Captain Case, Pasco's uncle, and he again reminds her that delicate ladies don't belong here. She loses her temper on him and tells him off for not only how he's talking to her, but also for the terrible way that he treats Pasco. She backs him out of the room and leaves him speechless, which I just love that image of her just shaking her finger at him and just backing him out of a room. Instead of returning to Duke's Citadel, Sandry goes again to Winding Circle, this time with the knowledge that she can work with the unmagic. Lark returns with Sandry to back her up when she explains her plan that she has created to Duke Vedris. She will weave a net like the one used in Pasco's fishing dance, but the material will be unmagic threads. They will work together to draw in the killers. They will be unable to resist since the unmagic has consumed so much of them. At first, the Duke refuses outright. How is it possible that of all of the mages at Winding Circle, his 14-year-old great-niece is the only one who can do this working? Lark finally decides to break down how unique and powerful Sandry is. Lark and others must use physical objects to send their magic through for it to work. Sandry can grasp and weave the magic itself. Baron Erdogan tries to argue that the Citadel spells will protect them, and Lark has to shut him down pretty hard by impressing on him how impossible it is to guard against this. And he calls her an alarmist. While they deliberate, Alzena Dihanor has come to case the Citadel. She makes it all the way through to the newly erected barricade outside of the inner keep. She's now showing signs of the madness caused by unmagic. She feels no real sense of passion anymore. While in her head about all of this, she stumbles and makes a sound. Instantly, the guards are on her. They can't see her, but they know generally where she is and sweep their blades in front of them, knowing that they can cut her even if they can't see her. After a brief scuffle with them, she flees. The Duke and his small party receive this news gravely. Erdogan is embarrassed at calling Lark an alarmist and not believing the spells would fail. They still try to talk Sandry out of doing it, but her mind is set. The next morning, Sandry tells Pasco the plan. He wants to help and do something that his family will respect him for. They need a few days to ready everything. Yasmin agrees to spend every moment with Pasco. They need to refine his dance and get him to do it perfectly. He won't be able to see the net, and if he so much as grazes it, the unmagic will devour him. Sandry sets a permanent ward on the practice room so she doesn't need to be there to raise it and lower it every time they're done with his practice. She leaves them to it and goes to speak with Wulfric's assistants before his memorial. At the memorial, Sandry finally cries for her friend. She visits the fishing village to examine the net. Grandma Netmender teaches her the special knots that hold most of its magic. Sandry works through the night on her plans, and the next day she lays down the grid for Pasco to practice with. Yasmin is doing a strict job of keeping him in the lines. Heavy rain begins as Sandry goes to meet Lark for the networking. Duke Vedris defies all advice and rides a cart with her in the rain to support her. When he can go no further, he embraces Sandry and tells her that if she gets herself killed, he will be very disappointed. Before entering the work tent, Sandry has to cleanse herself. She puts on a plain cotton robe afterward and enters her work area. The work area is filled with things that remind her of home at Winding Circle. She feels Lark's magic all around her and is comforted by it. The tent is tightly warded to stop any stray power from the working from leaking. Sandry closes the wards and seals herself in. While Sandry works spinning the unmagic into a cord, it tries to consume her. It fights her as she tames it. After struggling for a while, the job's done. Though Sandry was in a trance-like state most of the time, she begins fashioning her net with the newly wound cord. The assassin couple have been floundering after the failed scouting mission. The unmagic makes them listless. Alzena gets the idea to start dosing with dragon salt to counteract it, like the mage does. After one hit of it, they are up and planning the next round of murders. Sandry is exhausted and sleeping after the net is done. The Winding Circle mages take her to the dance site while she sleeps. Dedicate Crane carries her in. Good old Dedicate Crane. Good to see him again. When she wakes, Pasco is there eating. She eats a little bit too and has to argue with Pasco about him not staying after his dance is completed. They send him to the musicians and Lark talks to Sandry alone. Sandry shares her horrible experience with weaving the unmagic and Lark comforts her. They've set up in the home of one of the Rocots. The man himself has volunteered to be bait for the dance. They time the dance to match up with when the man will begin his farce at the Citadel, demanding to return home. Pasco performs beautifully. He isn't even thrown off by a last-minute addition. They give him a pouch of dragon salt to drop in the center of the net, because the mage will be able to see the unmagic and won't touch the net unless he's tempted by something inside it. Once Pasco's done, the senior mages send him off. The assassins are at the Citadel trying to find a way in. Alzena and Nurhar are increasing their salt intake. They witness the staged scene. All of them, including the mage, feel a powerful sense of rightness in leaving the keep and following the easy prey. Back at the trap, of course, Pasco doesn't plan to leave. He uses a dance move he had been watching the others at the school perform, infusing it with magic to hide himself. The Dihonors follow the Rocot man to his home. They sneak in over a garden wall, and once inside they start searching but find nothing. While in the kitchen, they hear their prey in the next room. Before they kick the door in, Nurhar stops Alzena. He has spotted a floating piece of cake in a corner. Alzena attacks the invisible person eating it, and the spell drops. It's Pasco, of course. The mage cloaks him too, and they drag him to the next room and right into the trap. As the net drains the unmagic from them, the assassins tell their mage to remove the spells. He does so, and they speak to the room, demanding whoever is there to show themselves. Sandry has been hidden in a corner under an invisibility spell. She sees that they have Pasco hostage and makes herself visible. As she examines the people caught in her net, she realizes that the mage is actually a young boy, likely Pasco's age. Alzena threatens to kill Pasco if Sandry doesn't free them. Sandry pretends to do as they ask, while Alzena makes small cuts on Pasco. The unmage compliments the net that Sandry has made while she pulls up the pegs for it. He says that it's beautiful and that he'd never actually learned to make things with unmagic the way she did. She tells them that she must spin the net to unwind it and release him. While preparing her trap, she feels for the thread of Pasco's magic that she had taken all those days ago. She sends her power through it and springs her trap. At the same time that she sets her spindles spinning to pull the unmagic in, she uses the magical cord that she has tied to Pasco to throw him against the wall and away from Alzena. The spindle pulls the unmagic in, all of it that is infusing the bodies of her enemy too. The unmage, whose body is basically consumed by it, already realizes what's happening and just lets go, his body dissolving. Alzana and Nurhar have veins of unmagic coursing through them after all of their exposure to it. The spinning drags them across the room. They realize too late what is happening as the veins of unmagic pull their bodies apart and they explode in a shower of gore. It's such a cool scene. It's so dope. A couple of weeks later, after all of the dust has settled, Pasco is moving in with the other dancers at Yasmin's school. His family are unsure about it still, but a little bit more supportive than they were before, because now they know that his abilities can be used for hairier work. They just don't quite approve of him doing it with dancers. They don't find that to be a very respectable profession. Sandry spends these weeks isolated, hating herself. She came out of her room once to talk to Pasco to assure him that she wasn't angry with him for not leaving when she told him to. But other than that, has been completely isolated. Finally, letters from her siblings asking her why she hasn't written to them pull her out of the depression. She goes to see Lark at Discipline and meets Lark's new student. She and Lark talk for a while, and Sandry realizes that Lark knew since she left that Discipline wouldn't be her home anymore. Lark reassures Sandry that they are not done with each other and that Sandry is basically like a daughter to her. Sandry accepts that things are going to be different now and goes to offer Lark's new student her old room so that he can sleep next to Lark's workroom. Well, that was dark. So that was dark for a lot of reasons. I mean, obviously there was all the murders and stuff, but mostly what felt dark to me was the inner struggle that Sandry went through when realizing that her life was changing and would never be the same that it used to be. The A story here is, of course, the Rocott murders. What I think makes the book a perfect example of how to continue a series effectively, though, is Sandry's B story. Her growing up and taking on responsibilities of a teacher. When she returns to Discipline to see Lark, she's hit by all of these pangs of homesickness for a home that doesn't really exist anymore. This was her home. This was the place that she found a new family after the tragedies of her childhood. And now returning to it makes her feel like a stranger. She misses how things used to be, but is being relentlessly moved forward into new responsibilities with taking care of her uncle and teaching Pasco. That's something that I honestly think that most people can relate to. It's why these characters feel so real to me. When I first encountered this book, I was still in high school. So the most exciting part about it to me was the murders and solving the murders and, ooh, Sandry has a new student. Look at this new type of magic. It's super neat. Since then, I've had a job that moved me across the country, away from most of my friends and family. The home that I spent most of my teenage years in is no longer in my family. So even when I go home, it's not exactly like going home. Sandry misses how things used to be. That homesickness and a desire to go back to how things were feels more real to me now than it ever did before. It takes my breath away when Sandry returns to Discipline and stands there just looking at it, feeling this sense of wrongness. It actually does feel like I'm watching these characters grow up. Watching their desires change as they adapt to new situations. The addition of Pasco makes for some really great world building through learning about him and his family. It's interesting to see the world outside of the mage's insular system and how people outside often don't understand or respect mages if they don't immediately recognize what they do as something valuable or something that is tangible. Every interaction with Pasco's uncle just cuts to my core. I know how it feels to do something or want to do something that most of your family doesn't really consider real work. Mostly just because it doesn't fit into what their idea of what real work should look like. With the subject matter of this book, it would be really easy to make it this grimdark story where everything is sad and angsty. What I think is more difficult in storytelling is taking these darker subject matter and making the story still feel hopeful at the end. That's all I've really got for Magic Steps. Next in this series, I will be moving straight through the next Circle Opens books. I am really excited to get back through this whole series. If you like this video, don't forget to leave a like so the algorithm doesn't swallow me up. Subscribe if you want to see more. I swear things will pick up again very soon. I'm nearing the end of the semester. But it is research paper and large writing assignment and exam season that we're heading into, so that's going to be fun. If you are interested in some behind the scenes stuff and also occasional polls on what my next subject's going to be, then head on over to my Patreon, where, like I said, I am posting the first 25 pages of a story that I'm working on, which is pretty cool. You can subscribe for just a couple bucks a month and help me fund my ability to do this full time and put more stuff out. Thank you to my current patrons: Mariodoc Brandybuck, Ms. Psycho, Amy Chu, aka the Doctor, Lord Butterbutt, Bruce, Red, Kirsten, Olivia, and Mark. Thank you all for your support. I'm going to go and take my dog outside. Bye. Cat, stop. No. Stop. Stop. Cat.